All right, thanks so much. We are going to change tacks here just a little bit. Try and keep you awake after lunch for a minute. We got some formatting issues on our slide, which is fine. I didn't like that photo anyway. My name is Lindsay DeFrates, again, Deputy Director of Communications with the Colorado River District. And today we are talking about all kinds of different divides. This particular panel is going to take a look at, I don't know if we call it a divide, but the generational perspective on all of these conversations. And it came about because Raquel Flinker and I were diving into some old files in the River District system to talk about a particular issue that's of great importance. And I have to develop these slides. And I came across a slide deck from 2003 that was saying exactly what I was about to try to make a new slide about. And then I was talking to Amy Moyer, who had had some similar conversations where we started to recognize that there's patterns here. We have had some of these conversations, if not most of them, before, which in some ways can be very sobering. Didn't we learn anything last time? And in some ways can be inspiring. Well, we got through it last time. And so this panel is going to take a look at that generational divide of haven't we been here before through headlines. And we pulled some new ones and some old ones. Each one of these panelists has given me one or two headlines to mix in. And they are going to vote on which year that headline occurred, and they'll have an option. And I encourage you all to join us on your phone. You will be able to vote as well and see how astute you are in identifying patterns of these conversations. As someone who's only been involved for about 5 years, I think I'm just starting to get on the pendulum swing back to say, haven't we been here before? And I'm going to practice. We have one slide to practice. So let's see. There we go. So this is our practice headline. And I did check with our board director, Scott McGinnis, beforehand if I could use it as an example. But from an actual printed paper, this headline said, McGinnis threatens to douse water chief. So our panel up here is going to use the analog version of a whiteboard to write their answer. You all can join us on your phones and guess, was it 1971, 91, 2001, or this year? And then once we have some votes in, we'll take a look, see where it came from, and each one of us will provide a little bit of perspective around what was happening at that time, what were the lessons and the takeaways, and let's see where we get to with this one. All right, so great, that's fantastic graphics, nailed it. This headline was from 1991, and this is a story about how House Majority Leader Scott McGinnis threatened with a grin to pour a pitcher of Western Slope water over the head of the Denver Water Department's representative at Colorado Water Congress workshop this morning. So from 1991, but here we are again having difficult conversations. All right, so they practiced this already. We're actually going to get into it here with some headlines that they haven't seen. And if the AV team can just kind of stay on the slides for this one, I don't need to see my face any larger. All right, so here we go. First one. Still no accord reached on Colorado water use. Was that 2002? Was that 1978? Was that 1954? Was that 1921? And I have been a little bit mean with the years I mixed in. I did try to sort of group them around some significant conversations. You guys ready? Before we do that, I got to make some introductions. We're going to start down there with Jay Seaton. Would you like to say hello and say what it is you do in this conversation around water?
Sure. And I am not a water person, but I run the Daily Sentinel, which sees as one of its core missions covering water in the River District.
Yeah, I'm Stephen Foster. I'm a water resources engineer at the Colorado River District. Relatively new and happy to be back on the West Slope.
Hello, everyone. My name's Ted Kowalski, and I lead the Colorado River program on behalf of the Walton Family Foundation, where we're seeking to have a sustainable Colorado River basin for the environment and for all of the communities that depend on it, from the headwaters down through Mexico.
And I'm Emily Zmak. I'm with the Colorado River team at CWCB, the Colorado Water Conservation Board, and I'm the Deputy Chief of the Interstate Federal and Water Information Section.
All right, well, thank you so much. So could you, panelists, please show us what year you chose? And then let's go to the answer slide with that wonderful check mark. Okay. So we have some spread: 1921, 1954, 2002, and 2002. Well, the answer is 2002. And this was submitted by Ted. Would you like to give us a little bit of context on what this headline comes from? And it's up here on the screen, so you can take a look.
Sure. So I think in part why I was included on this panel, and maybe my gray hairs give it away, but I was with the state of Colorado for many, many years before I moved over to the Walton Family Foundation about 10 years ago. And I was at the Water Conservation Board in the 2002 frame. And that headline certainly could have been written today. And as we just heard, eloquently from Becky Mitchell and Andy's conversation, we're not at an accord. And we weren't back in the early 2000s until, at the time, Secretary of Interior Gail Norton basically held a hammer over the state's head and said, you guys decide or I will. And it took a number of years after that time before the 07 guidelines resulted. But there was not a deal until there was a deal. And I think the same issues were happening then. There was threats of litigation. There was all sorts of emotion and anger and finger pointing. And ultimately, the states were able to get to an accord. And I would say, I have some hope hearing Becky's remarks that, they're still at the table. We won't have a deal until we get to a deal. But I would just encourage them, just to continue to get a deal, because litigation is the least best option. It's a horrible option, and my experience from there is in the Arkansas River, where it was just 2 states, but it took decades and decades of litigation, tens of millions of dollars, and you had things like Crowley County drying up, and litigation's not going to be our friend. So happy to see that there could be an accord from the previous talk.
Thanks so much. By the way, can I ask someone at staff to keep score? I need to know who's going to win here. There is some pride on the table.
Are there prizes?
Fabulous prizes. I'll tell you about them later. All right, the next one that's coming up. Colorado River Commission will ask for millions. Colorado River Commission will ask for millions. Is it 2024, 1966, 1922, 2005? And I know a lot of you are think, well, it could be any of those years. Lots of things going on. You got to take your best guess, though, about when this one occurred. And I will actually ask maybe we zoom in on the speakers when they hold up their signs so we can help keep score. It's really important to keep score. You don't want to embarrass them? Oh, okay. All right, well, let's see what our answers are. We have, kind of all over the board. 2005, 1966, 1966, and 1922. All right, let's go back to the slide and take a look. Correct answer was 1922. We are going way back in time from the Montrose Daily Press, which was publishing about Colorado River issues at that time. And Emily submitted this one. Do you want to tell us a little bit about what was going on?
Yeah, so the federal government has played a very long historic role in funding projects throughout the Colorado River Basin. This article is from 1922, and it was a little bit tricky because Herbert Hoover was leading an effort, a group of people called the Colorado River Commission, not to be confused with the Upper Colorado River Commission.
See what we did there?
And the ask from the commission was for Congress to consider millions of dollars in order to fund the Boulder Canyon Dam, which of course later became the Hoover Dam. And for the lower basin, this was an opportunity for the feds to sweeten the deal because the dam promised hydropower, promised flood protection, and of course it promised expanded irrigated agriculture in parts of the lower basin. And if we fast forward 100 years, we know today the Hoover Dam has allowed for uses that regularly exceed their compact apportionments. The reason this was tricky is because, of course, we're still talking about the importance of federal funding in the basin, and I think when we discuss a post-26 agreement, federal funding is an important part of any potential solution, as it would give a soft landing for reducing uses in the lower basin. And to echo comments from Congressman Hurd a little bit earlier today, I was just reviewing a journal article yesterday from earlier this month that looked at how reclamation investments over the last couple of years fell within the basin. These were investments for water conservation and efficiency. And in total, the programs amounted to approximately $1 billion with a B. And what the researchers found was that 5.7% of those funds went to the upper basin. 75.5% went to the lower basin, and 18.8% to tribal areas, which I think is just an important piece of the discussion when we talk about federal funding and what that looks like going forward. So I'll leave it at that.
I like that they could build a dam for millions. Our dam safety engineer, you want to give us a quote on building Hoover Dam today? More than 1 million. All right, you have it. All right, so the next headline up is going to be really easy to pin down. Attorneys see light at the end of the tunnel for state water deal. Which state, which water deal? Sorry, I don't have that context for you. Take your best guess, 1992, 1812, 1952, or 2012. All right, you guys ready? Let's hold them up. What do we got? 2012, 52. Nobody said 1812? I was really hoping 12. Okay, great. The actual answer is going to be the one in front of me, which is 2012. And Jay, you sent this one in. Let me skip over to so people can take a look at it. This was from Sentinel, and you want to tell us what was going on and who was writing this?
Sure. I thought this story was interesting because it involves all the same players that are engaged in all these discussions today. And this was during the negotiation up to the cooperative agreement for the river. And, one of the linchpin issues was Shoshone rights. And the holdouts were Grand Valley water interests who, were absolutely insistent that the Shoshone rights be, I think this was very strategic by them. If you read the story, and now you know what's happened with the rights. They were setting the table for what ultimately the River District has been able to achieve. So it's just sort of an interesting moment in time, but all the same players with Denver Water and attorneys bickering about all this stuff. It's also interesting in that the guy that wrote this story is Dennis Webb, who is a longtime public lands and water reporter for the Daily Sentinel. And I assume Dennis may be here, but he's extremely valuable to our mission, which is really a First Amendment mission. And I really just want to touch on this for a moment because the value of the work that Dennis does and that the community newspapers do. We saw the Montrose Daily Press here earlier. Putting a light on these issues, getting the facts correct so that everyone can understand what's happening, that's what leads to policy change. And so, a guy like Dennis who invests deeply into these issues and we know is read at Interior. We know that they know his name. They read the Sentinel every day, apparently. And so getting these issues right puts us in a stronger position, I think, from the community understanding what's happening and what's at stake and where we're headed and what our history is. So that's why I chose that 2012 article.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I get to talk to a lot of reporters in my line of work, and if you want someone who can actually explain this stuff to you in a much shorter time frame than an entire day's-long seminar, and you'll understand more when you walk away, find your local reporter. The work they do is invaluable. We really do rely on them to keep you guys engaged and keep these issues up front where they're supposed to be because they impact all of us so much.
Let me make one more pitch. Pay for news.
Pay for news.
Regardless if it's the Daily Sentinel, the Montrose Daily Press, the Denver Post, pay for your news. It keeps these newspapers alive, and they're doing important work.
All right, well, next one's up here. The West's cities are booming in population. Will they need a lot more water? I think I left a question mark off there. I apologize. You can just read that in. 2024, 1914, 2004, 1964. Bragging rights for the audience who's getting the most ones of these right. We can do a check-in at each table when we're done.